You're watching Cablevision, Channel 14, local origination programming, your hometown network.
Welcome to Mind Over Matter. Today we're going to talk about mental illness in the elderly and look at alternative approaches to treatment. And we have obviously three guests, and I appreciate all of your being here today. We have Naida Weisburg, who is a drama therapist, Marcha Spindell, who is an expressive and dance therapist, and Lowinger, who is an art therapist. And I guess when I say alternative, what you do differently from the way I do it. But I think we all tend to work with older people generally who sometimes are a little resistant to getting engaged in treatment. So perhaps we could start by each of you, maybe starting with you, Naida, talking a little bit about your approach to working with people who are having some difficulties, who have come to your attention, and you're asked to sort of get involved with them.
Well, if I come into a nursing home, I come in with a bag or two bags of tricks, as we call them, known as a bag lady. You have to come in with stimuli because everyone responds and reacts to different kinds of things depending on what kind of lives they've had. Some people are not communicative at all, and other people are very anxious to see what you have, in your bag. While I'm setting up, I generally bring green things from my garden, as I have today. This is an old-fashioned flower called borage, and this is something that smells and tastes a little bit like celery, and it's called lovage. Then I have some parsley here, and basil, and some garlic as I'm setting up, and also some mint. And as I'm setting up, and the circle of chairs in the nursing home is already set up with people, some of whom are probably half asleep, and others are vaguely interested in what's going on. I pass these around, and I ask them to, or I'll pull off a sprig, and I'll hand it around. And I'll say, can you tell what it is? Can you guess? Can you smell it? You could even taste it a little if you want to. And I'll be getting comments from people saying, oh, I know what that is, or I used to grow that, or that tastes terrible. And if I pass around the garlic, and especially if I have some Italian people in the group, they'll say, oh, spaghetti bolognese, or I used to make that, or my mother made that, and I love that, and it tastes wonderful. And the mint, oh, give me some mint tea. How I would love to have some mint tea right now. We can't get it in the nursing home. So while they're responding to these green things, I'm getting an idea of who I have to work with this morning or this afternoon. I'm getting to know who's going to have a lot to say, who needs a little bit more prompting, who needs, say, for instance, another kind of stimuli, like, say, from my bell or from my shell, because this kind of thing will prompt stories about the beach and childhood experiences and adventures. That kind of thing.
Okay. So a lot of it is just sort of ways to kind of help people express themselves, even though they're not necessarily deliberately doing so.
What I'm doing is trying to get people who don't communicate particularly with one another, may communicate only episodically with staff, to focus.
Okay.
And then to eventually share during the session, share experiences.
Okay.
My uncle had a bell like that on the farm. My mother used to use a bell like that to get us from playing outside. I remember that bell from school. And pretty soon you get people who seemed to be out of it, suddenly very excited and happy to tell you about their prior lives, which of course is very validating, and that's what we're looking for, to help people help them to validate themselves.
Okay, now,
Yeah.
what would your approach be?
I think what's probably different is that I'm not necessarily relying or expecting a verbal approach. So when I go into a group, I usually have my bag of music and my cassette player. And as I'm setting up and getting my music ready, I am consciously knowing and try to make eye contact, or I'll go up to each individual and say, hello, how are you? Or have some conversation, but I'm very well aware of there's some people who cannot speak or choose not to speak, or if they speak, it comes off as confusing or unintelligible to someone else who's used to more common verbal communication. So I'm aware of how I'm using my body and my approaching them into their space, as well as how are they responding to my verbal and nonverbal approach to engage them. So even though the formal dance movement therapy session may not occur, I'm on. And I'm picking up on a sense of who is still sleeping, who's nodding off. There are many elderly people whose eyes are closed, and I say, good morning, I know you're there, and they go, I say, yes, I get the nod. Or on a more formal level, I might say, good morning, and wait for them to see my hands. I might go the next step and say, good morning, will you take my hands? And I'm assessing at the same time, as Naida has done in some of her initial contact, who is alert, to what degree are they alert, how easily are they going to engage, are they going to nod off, are they going to be receptive, how many times of encouragement do they need, and that's before the beginning of the formal session.
Of course, because really what both of you have said, and be interested, Laurie, in what you have to say, is you're both doing your diagnostic assessments. So we all know that you diagnose before you treat in the medical
Yes.
model. So
Yes.
how would you go about that?
Also, art therapy is a nonverbal approach as well, and we're not relying on any verbal communication. When I come into a group, and I work both in a senior facility that's an outpatient and have done work in nursing homes, the people have been selected for me when I come into a group. Generally, the activity director or program director will get people who they think might benefit from an art therapy group. And sometimes the people who are selected do not want to be there. Some of them do, and they readily engage in selecting materials for themselves. The people who don't, who sit back, are more what I have noticed to be the people who have much more of a disability. Perhaps they are suffering from the complications of a stroke or Parkinson's disease, and they no longer feel that they are going to be able to produce aesthetically pleasing art. That's one of the hang-ups, truthfully, that elder people have with art, and they have a tendency to resist in making things. They think they have to be good at what they're doing. So I immediately tell them that we've left our talent at the door. No one here is being judged on what you do, and I let them know that whatever happens is accepted, and to try means that you have accomplished something, no matter what it happens to look like. And given that approach that I take, I don't really get much resistance. I come in, I smile every minute for them, I go up to them, I rub their shoulders, I praise them for every little thing. A person who has trouble getting to the box of pencils and they are able to get a pencil, I comment on that. Every tiny task, I take a task and break it down into a million steps so that they experience success in every step of the way.
Okay. All right, well, we don't have a lot of time left, and I guess the question is, you're setting the stage, you're getting an assessment of who it is out there that you're going to be working with. I think that then the question that then follows, and we can talk about it for like just a couple of minutes now, is toward what end? So you set up, you get people ready, you get a sense of who's available, who's more resistant, who's more withdrawn. Toward what end? How do you then go about, what's the next step?
Is there time to start telling you what the next step is?
A couple of minutes.
Okay.
Time's going to be an issue, especially, I think, with the four of us, but we'll do the
right.
best we can.
Well, depending on what the theme is for the day, and one generally comes in with a few ideas, depending on who's there and how they respond to you, as we just discussed. Let's say that it seems as though everybody is in a playful mood or playful enough mood, and I think I'll get enough response from it. I might bring in this wonderful shoe that actually belonged to my mother-in-law one time, and ask people what it reminds them of, and they will say they remember it from times past, and perhaps a few actually wore a shoe like this when they were young. But someone inevitably will come up with it's a Cinderella shoe. And we may start to talk about that story about Cinderella and talk about what kind of a person was Cinderella and what kind of person her stepmother was, and so on and so forth. And then we will take roles and find out perhaps that the stepmother, you'll find out from the stepmother that she wasn't such a dreadful person after all, that she was given a bad rap, and that Cinderella maybe wasn't just the poor little girl that she's been depicted in all the stories, or that she was, somebody will say, well, she was simple. And you may get onto the subject of abuse with these older adults and find out that they know a lot more than they are.
So you're kindling. You're basically trying to promote people's associations to these articles, to basically stimulate them to kind of share with you some of their own life experience?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a springboard for them to bring into our mutual conversation something about their lives. And they bring to it, as you know, if they start talking about a stepmother or the neighbors or perhaps counselors who didn't exist in the story, that is, it's possible for people to seek help. It's possible for people to find ways of helping themselves in their lives or their families if they're worried about their families. They bring so much of their own lives to this story. It's a vehicle. The prop and the story of Cinderella is a vehicle for getting people to talk and discuss and take roles.
But apparently, and we'll have to maybe pick up with this after the break, but apparently sort of implied in your presentation is that vehicles like that are useful. I don't use vehicles. I sit there and talk to people and try to promote conversation with them. But your suggestion is that there are an alternative array of different techniques that really promote, facilitate people sharing with you. So after the break, maybe we can pick up with that and how you use these techniques for getting people to share with you. So we'll have to stop now.
Okay.
Good game, ladies!
Yeah, you too.
Okay, who's up for lunch?
Oh, sorry. I gotta take my husband to the doctor.
Is everything okay?
Oh, yeah. It's a colon cancer test. Pretty routine, really.
But he's so young. Isn't Tim barely 50?
52. And actually, he should have had this about 2 years ago. But, you know...
I'm supposed to get screened too, but I don't have the time either.
We're all busy, but if you're 50 and older, you should make time to get tested for colon cancer, which kills over 50,000 people a year and strikes women nearly as often as men. But you can beat colon cancer and even prevent it if it is detected early. People have all sorts of reasons for not getting tested. They may be too embarrassed or have no symptoms or family history. But there is one powerful reason to get screened for colon cancer. It can save your life. So please get tested now.
Call 1-800-ACS-2345.
All my friends used to say the first time you go to the beach, get a good burn. You know, you'll tan faster. So, you know, at the end of 3 or 4 days, we'd be peeling and, you know, skin falling off. Tan was considered healthy. And none of us knew the potential ramifications of overexposure to the sun. About 3 years ago, I noticed a red spot at the end of my nose. Well, you see a doctor look you in the eye and say, you know, that you have a malignancy on your face. That's a little frightening. In fact, it's very frightening, especially when you see, a piece of you being carved away in little slivers. Skin cancer, that wouldn't happen to me. I mean, it never occurred to me. Life is very precious to me now. Almost losing it makes that very, very clear.
Continue with
Okay, go ahead, Marcia, your turn.
I think what is primarily different as a dance movement therapist is that, first of all, no one has to do anything in my group. They are welcome to watch, listen, and be present. So the expectations are similar to yours, is that your being here is acceptable. I also know that depending on what senses are working or not working, they're picking up through the sound, sight, smells, whatever we call body chemistry, in that they're being there, they're going to have input into their bodies. So when I start the group formally, shifts are important. I know in traditional psychiatry we're paying attention to that too, but I will consciously say, okay, let's shift. Let's take our legs and put our feet on the floor if you're able to. And we're going to take a deep breath in. I do a lot with breathing. And constantly having them pay attention to the body message. And I say that out loud. You know your bodies better than I do, so respect it. If something's difficult, try a different way to do it. If you have an acute pain, pay attention to that pain. So that from the get-go, I'm respecting what they know about themselves. Even if they're not able to verbally say it, my training allows me to tune in. So if I see a winch, if I see someone saying, I can't move their shoulder because there's arthritis, that's okay. Move within the comfort zone that you're able to do what you can. So it's building upon the strengths, similar to what Lori was saying in terms of every bit of what they're able to do is getting reinforced. Along with, my knees hurt, I can't do it. I said, I know. But look at that, you're still able to tap. And I do know anatomy, and I'm aware of body kinesthetics, so that I'll say, well, let's not move from our knee, let's move from a hip, so that I'm constantly trying an approach that is building upon what they're able to do. Mm-hmm. With that comes, and you have noticed I haven't said anything about music yet. Now I introduce the music, and the music can act as a container for people who are disorganized. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I'll use recorded music to help focus. Sometimes I will not go with music at all and just do some breathing and some singing to help focus. All along the way that probably is a little different is that I don't necessarily need props to motivate the experience, because the experience is what is created between myself and the client or the group of people there. Mm-hmm. Okay. Whatever evolves, evolves. I do not come in with
you're
the priest.
Prop, basically. But one difference, it seems to me, is Naida is suggesting that what she does hopefully stimulates associations and memories and stories, whereas what you do seems to be geared toward helping people get in touch with not just who they are, but what some of their strengths might be.
Yes, along with accepting the changes that have occurred with getting older.
All right, well, let's get to that in a minute. Right. Okay, how about you?
Very similarly, when I begin a group, I come in with postcards of master paintings that I've been collecting since I was in graduate school, and I have a very large box, and I've got some art here that hopefully we'll get a chance to see that is representative of that. And people look through it and they pick out what is interesting to them. And if they are able, they draw it. If they are not able to do it, then I may ask them to pick a color that they see on the postcard and work with the color. The paints are on the table, colored pencils are on the table, crayons, a whole array of art materials that some of these people have not used since they were children and are uncomfortable going back into using the materials. So I really urge them to pick up what they feel comfortable with first to start with what feels good, and then we can move along through the therapy process. It's a closed group that I run, and so I see people for months, and I have a fortunate for that we can progress through different materials. And people will choose their subject matter. Some people can't communicate verbally, so I have to rely on a lot of facial expressions and body language.
But I guess the important question is, toward what end? I mean, what's your objective? And maybe we'll go this way, but what are you trying to accomplish? You give me a postcard, and I've picked one, I guess, that I can relate to, and then you ask me to draw it or
Never. I don't actually use the word draw.
Okay.
Because if you ask a person draw something, that can promote immediate resistance.
Forget about it, I'll freeze.
So exactly. So what you say is instead, how would the pencil look on the paper? Start with a point. How would a dot look on the paper? And where would you put that door that you see on your card? So that they're starting with some small aspect of it. I never use the word draw, because that's a real big cue.
But why are you asking me to do this?
I'm asking you to do this because I want you to experience something successful. Many times elders at this point of their lives are focusing on what they cannot do any longer, not what they are able to do. And I want them to experience something good for themselves, something that they're going to feel proud over, and something that we can talk about their strengths from witnessing it. Art also is a visual legacy. It provides that, so that when they leave, there is something for their family members. And sometimes people create things knowing. I do have a sense that sometimes people know when their time is, and they do create things for their family. There are other people who just want to improve and know that they're witnessing themselves declining, but are hanging on to what they can do, and I want to promote that for them. I want them to feel good about what they're able to do. And some of the artworks are incredible. We have some people who have had strokes and are now drawing with their opposite hand, and the art that is created is sometimes better than the people who were using their dominant hand. And it's all from the group members motivating them, me motivating them, self-motivation. When they're getting praise from me and praise from their group members, they're feeling good about what they're doing and they want to continue.
Okay. And that's your experience as well?
The experience in dance movement therapy sessions, I think, is to experience the pleasure and joy that comes with moving. And that's a little bit different than just exercise. Yes, I may do structured movement to increase body awareness, which lends to self-image work, but it is also to experience the joy that comes out of harmonious rhythm. Along with that, though, is the triggering of other emotions that as a therapist I have to be aware of. Sadness, anger, betrayal of the body when there's a loss due to stroke, frustration articulating when there's aphasia and they can't fully form the words, but they have it in the head, it doesn't produce. So the movement becomes a way of being expressive, both with the pleasures and also channeling some of the frustrations they may now have due to some medical problems and or psychiatric problems that are secondary to physical illnesses. The first thing that I'll do, answering your question to what objective, is to establish trust, because no therapy is going to be successful unless that person or people are really going to trust that I can handle whatever they are expressing, either with words or without words. So I'll give you a good example. Last week in a session, this was at an Alzheimer day treatment center. It was one of those crazy, chaotic days. And it's designed so that people can walk freely outside. A woman had fallen. And the staff was outside surrounding the woman who had fallen, and no one was in the group paying attention other than myself. So I said, that is okay. She is getting help. Does anyone have feelings about that? Now, I've already established a relationship with most of these people. And I could tell they couldn't talk, because Alzheimer's, one of the problems is you can't always articulate. And I said, well, let's take a breath in let's quiet ourselves for a moment and let's focus on just being here. And maybe you want to take someone's hand if that's comfortable to you. But at the same time, I'm letting them know what I see is going on. The rescue squad is coming. The woman's being taken care of. It's all right. We all have been there. Has anyone ever felt in a helpless position? Now, I'm verbalizing what I see there, but because of the dance movement part, I'm recognizing the feet tapping. Mm-hmm. I see the shoulders crunching, and I'm working constantly back and forth between the verbal and the nonverbal. And by being, I'm going to use Lori. And if I approach Lori, I'll say, okay. And I'm on eye level. So if I'm standing up, and because of the camera, I'm not going to stand up, I will get to eye level and I'll approach and say, do you want to hold my hand? And the person may or may not take it. I say, can you take the next person's hand? And often they can't. And I'll say, okay, we all know that we're okay now, but we've been there where maybe we weren't okay. And that extension of holding hands in an accepting way, nurturing way, is very different than someone say, take your hand, I'm walking into the bathroom. So I was mediating that crisis in a group where verbally they weren't able to say anything. And there was one person getting up and going, look what's happening out there, and she's disrupting the group simultaneously as I'm trying to contain it. So in movement therapy, there's the objective of engaging in trust, feeling the joy and pleasure in moving your body to music, whether it's stimulated by our own voices and breathing, tapping, and allowing for other feelings to emerge that may have to do with sudden crises or the fact that I can't say what I'm concerned about. Where's that person? And another woman got out of the group and said, I got to go see my husband. I have to see my husband. It was very chaotic. Agitated. So my job is constantly allowing people to pay attention, reinforcing that connection to their body, that it's okay. And a lot of the nonverbal responses that we're giving out all the time, I am trying to affirm verbally and nonverbally. Okay. The trust is important, so when there is a crisis or there is a loss or there is something that evolves where the person might remember, oh, you know, my husband, he used to drink all the time. We can then talk about it. Or non-verbally, when I'm doing some action, I might see a man go like this. I'll say, okay, what are you punching? What would you like to put out there? And the punch becomes a dynamic, safe way of getting some of the frustration, anger out. I might allow a transition to happen by saying, now open your hand. So it takes on a different quality rather than a fighting quality. It can become a reaching out across the circle quality. So we can acknowledge feelings as well as help transform them. That's the word I wanted. Transform them into something that's connecting each other in the group. Or I may stay with the punch depending on what the group is emerging. So there's that level of trust that happens verbally, non-verbally, handling crises that happen, paying attention to the body, experiencing joy, but knowing that as we say experience joy, we might experience those other emotions that are pretty powerful.
Well, we'll have to take a break, but maybe after the break we can come back to this question of toward what end and start with you, Naida, but because, I mean, we're engaged in a therapeutic mission. I know I'm using medical model terms, but and you can take exception to that, but I think the toward what end is very, very important. And then I also want to get back to the question of trust and how you go about developing trust. So after the break, why don't we pick up with this?
This is my family. That's my mom and dad. And my brother. And that's me, future Hall of Famer. That's Grandpa. He's my best friend. Grandpa's got diabetes, but he's got it under control.
I keep my blood sugar close to normal. That means I watch what I eat and walk every day. I always take my medicine and test my blood sugar because I want to be around to see the next Jackie Robinson.
Control your diabetes for life. Call 1-800-438-5383.
I don't want to go blind from diabetes.
I don't want to lose a foot or a leg.
I don't want to have kidney failure, so I'm taking control. I'm controlling my diabetes.
It's making a huge difference.
I'm eating healthy and staying physically active.
I'm taking my medicine.
If I can do it, anyone can. Control your diabetes for life. Call 1-800-438-5383.
Naida, so I understand that your task is to try to sort of promote a kind of storytelling, a kind of sharing, to help people express themselves. Why?
Well, I think everybody probably enjoys talking about him or herself in some way or other. And in a nursing home, the opportunity for doing that and for sharing life's experiences, I think, are rather narrow, rather slim.
So that's an hypothesis, though, because there are many people, I think, that where it reflects their depression who feel I have nothing to talk about, I have an uninteresting story to tell.
Exactly.
Nobody would want to listen to it.
Exactly. So you have to go around the back door.
Okay.
And this is how we go around the back door. With, say, for instance, somebody, say there's a fella who doesn't know why he's there, and he's sitting there, and you say, that's just fine. You don't have to participate. It's wonderful that you're here. Just be here and watch and listen to what's going on. You don't have to participate.
But it isn't wonderful I'm here. I'm useless. I'm just taking up space. I shouldn't be here.
Well, it's in some cases you might say that's okay. If you want to go back to your room, it's all right. If you want to go back to your room, and maybe we'll be lucky the next time. I think if somebody puts up a real fight about being there, then we certainly don't insist that they continue to be there, but we will try.
But I want to fight with you. I don't want to leave the room, really. I want to fight with you.
By the way, sir, how about this? How would you respond to this? A cow said, "You silly hen, why are you sitting on that axe?" And what do you suppose the hen said? "Shh, I want a hatchet." Now, this kind of a guy may think that's pretty funny. You say, how about this one? Why did the telephone run away from home? It wanted to join a 3-ring circus. You might get a, see. He may not like this other stuff. He doesn't want to smell your flowers. He doesn't care about your bell. He doesn't care about your shell. He wasn't interested in Cinderella and so forth. The box, yeah, he was sort of interested in the box. As a matter of fact, I used to have a workshop once upon a time. And matter of fact, the wife and her sister used to have me making cabinets. My God, I had cabinets. My God, I was making them for the neighbors. I was making them for my kids. That's a nice little box. Where'd you get it? That kind of thing.
All right, but what if instead he says, you can't possibly know what I've been through? You know, let's say the box stimulates some association. How could you possibly know? And you could care less. I've been through so much, you know, how could you possibly want to hear my story?
Actually, where did you grow up? Mr.
X.
Yeah. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New Hampshire.
Did you grow up in New Hampshire? Whereabouts? I know something about New Hampshire.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Well, why
Lived there myself.
Yeah.
Did you live near the mountains?
No, I lived in the city.
You lived in the city. Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
But you're so young, and you know,
I'm not so
you
young.
haven't suffered the way I've suffered.
Listen, I'm not so young. I'm not so young. Don't be silly. It's just a state of mind.
Yeah.
Probably closer to your age than you think. That kind of thing. So you can have that kind of banter with that sort of guy, and pretty soon he's your friend. can make a friend out of this sort of person.
Well, why would I let you be my friend? I'll probably not see you again, or it's just your job, or you're getting paid to talk to me, or, you
Well,
know.
hopefully I'll be back next week. Yes. Hopefully I'll be back next week and I'll see you. And is there anything particularly that you're interested in? You know, I have some good recordings. Are you interested in music? I have some. So, any particular composer or kind of music that you like? I'll be very happy to pick some up and bring it in and play it for you.
Okay.
Different ways of talking, different levels of talking to people. One may be, for instance, well, I could hear myself talking to you in a different way from what I might with Mrs. Stewart. Mrs. Stewart, who has only one eye open, and she says, I remember that shell. I used to collect shells on the beach with my children and put it up to my ear. I say, you put it up to her ear. Oh, yes, we used to think that we could hear the ocean. Now, I'm going to talk to Mrs. Stewart in a different way. I'm going to reflect the way she talks.
Okay.
I'm going to pick up on her tone.
And you can build on it, too.
And build on it, and on her cadence. Whereas I'm going to be kind of teasing and kind of joshing with Mr. S., who came from New Hampshire. And I'm going to establish a relationship with him on his terms.
My life in New Hampshire was so brutal. I can't participate. How would you respond?
Well, I would take a similar starting position and say, you know, I hear that you don't think this is going to be helpful. Are you able to sit here for a few minutes?
What else do I have to do?
All right, can you stay with me a few minutes? Okay. And I'll tell you what, you don't have to do anything active. It's going to be your choice as to how you participate. Is that okay? Is that acceptable? And usually they'll say yes, because even the person who's paralyzed or unable to move will put up enough of a fuss or try to fall out of the chair or do whatever they can physically to get attention, to get help. So I'm paying attention to that cue. And there's one elderly person I work with that I know for a fact he's had a psychiatric background. But in a nursing home, that's not necessarily what they'll clue me in, because most nursing homes are clued into the medical condition, what physical care is. But I also knew that he is a violinist and a painter, and fought in the war. And he has a manic depressive background, so there are times he's half asleep or totally asleep in my groups, and times he's what we call high. He's very agitated, he's going constantly. And there was one session he was very agitated, angry at everybody. Don't you know I did this, and what are you doing here today, and I don't want to see you here today, and sort of taking on that role, but in a more confused state. You were presenting as someone who was a little bit competent, who could answer Naida back. Most of the people I work with, you say, where is that coming from? I had no idea what they're talking about. You simply see and observe the agitation, frustration, and anger. And I will again approach him and I said, okay, let's see you. Come on. And he's punching me already. I'll say, punch it down there. Go down there. Come on. Boom, 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 boom. And we'll start doing that together. And I'll say, okay, let's take a break and we're gonna, is that okay? And he'll say, yeah, but I'm mad at you. You did this to me. I said, all right, well, let's see if we keep a safe space and we'll just get it all out. Now I'm doing it verbally, I'm doing it non-verbally, and I'm aware of the rest of the group. And my job as a therapist is to make sure the rest of the group knows that I can handle that kind of behavior and feeling, and I'm not going to be overwhelmed or intimidated. At the same time that I'm working non-verbally, I'm also aware of the tone of my voice, how my body's responding to the person. I'm aware that I have to present as solid and stable but soft at the same time for the rest of the group. And I may consciously, in this case, choose a kind of music that would have a strong, direct beat so that we could channel some of that affect that's coming out on a nonverbal level. And I might get something that might take it into a different place. Maybe, maybe not. Depends where we want to go with it.
And if you were in my group, Mr. X.
Yeah, and I'm bitter. Let's say I have my faculties more or less. I'm just bitter. I'm mad at the world. My life in New Hampshire was really awful, and life since then has been a series of losses. We only have a few more minutes.
I would propose, first of all, to tell Mr. X that I couldn't possibly know what you're going through because I have not gone through it. I would acknowledge that because I think that's very important for him to hear. I would also open it to the group. Has anyone who is in this group ever felt like this before? Who here started the group feeling like this?
You don't know how I feel.
Well, you seem to be having trouble staying with us in a kind of comfortable mood. And so I wonder if there's anyone else who has ever felt uncomfortable in a group. And then I bring it and let them tell their stories, and then he's not by himself anymore. So the feeling of isolation that he may be feeling is going to dissipate just by hearing that there are other people who haven't gone through it.
My experience is often someone who's belligerent like this and angry doesn't want or finds it very difficult to connect. So again, it depends, opening up to the group. Anyone experience similar kinds of not wanting to be here? And just state it, not wanting to be here.
Sometimes it's a good idea if you have the opportunity to visit this individual in his room, see him alone before he comes to the group again.
Toward
It's
what
possible.
end? I mean, how would that promote?
To promote trust, to make a better relationship with him, to relate better to him, and hope that he will come to the group.
So what would you say to me in my room, or what would you?
Oh, I would probably come in again with a variety. Maybe I'd bring the music into his room. He said he was interested in music. Here, I brought a couple of tapes. This is what you said you'd like. Want to hear them? And I'm sure with that we'd get to talking more about New Hampshire. And see you tomorrow, or see you in a couple of days when we get the group. Okay? Okay?
So really, in all instances, there's an attempt to sort of promote the relationship that you have with which is really what we do. When we're not using the different techniques that you all are using. I think we're going to have to take a break in less than a minute, but I'd like to sort of use the last segment to sort of, it's kind of like, where's the beef? Where's the therapy? What's therapeutic in all of this? I mean, I have a good feeling, I think, for how you all approach the situations that you're in, but what I guess it's really reframing the same question, toward what end? I mean, we all, obviously, in your book here, Creative Arts and Older Americans, a source book, I mean, it's all geared toward, trying to help people feel better, trying to mobilize strengths, trying to feel more engaged, trying to overcome depression, isolation, withdrawal. So I think in the last segment it would be very helpful if we could sort of try to focus on, how you use this toward what end, and how you feel you maximize the likelihood of getting a therapeutic result. So after the break, we'll pick up with that.
Life doesn't have to pass you by. Even the simplest exercises can help you maintain a level of fitness necessary for an active and independent lifestyle. For more exercise tips, write to Exercise, AARP Connections, Washington, D.C. 20049.
new century is coming, and with it, 1,000 questions. Will your family ever be in harm's way? Will a small town in Texas be hit with a hurricane? Will your daughter ever need a new kind of blood treatment? We have no crystal ball for the world that awaits. Just one promise. We'll be there.
Okay, so in our last segment, I'd really like to focus on kind of why all of this, where does it go, and how does it work, and why is it, in your respective opinions, why is it therapeutic?
Art therapy, as I mentioned before, is a process-oriented approach, which means that the emphasis is not on the product. And it's very important when people come into the group that they understand that right from the very beginning. That, in and of itself, reduces frustration because there is no expectation of them to create a beautiful product. What my goals are is to help someone feel comfortable with themselves and to possibly be able to express themselves. I'm dealing right now, I work with a person who has Parkinson's disease. And when he came into our art therapy group for the first time, I gave him something it was a pre-drawn circular form for him to fill in so I could see what his ability was. And he immediately picked up a tube of paint that someone else was using and began to try to draw with the tube of paint. And so I don't know this man, I don't have a history. I can tell by some of his movements that he has Parkinson's. So to myself, I'm saying he's cognitively aware. Let me put the paints on a palette for him and see what happens. And he created this rainbow. And at the end, this took him an entire hour to complete. And he was very quiet. He's a very, very quiet man. Called it a modified rainbow. And when I asked him what was at the end of the rainbow, he said a pot of gold. But it was a very depressed affect. And I said, who would you like to have the pot of gold? And he said, well, I'd give one to you and I'd give one to the group. And I think what happened for him is that someone paid attention to a small thing that might have gone unnoticed in a group of 8. I noticed that he picked up that tube. So I knew that there was an interest there, and I think that that helped motivate him to want to come to the next session, which is the bottom piece of artwork here. This is a landscape that he has created, and I could see that there was a lot of skill here.
That's wonderful.
And I asked him where he learned to do this, and he has a degree from an art school. And no one in the senior center knew this. No one stopped. There was no one who has conversation because he's depressed, and I think what happens sometimes is the conversation tends to be less with people who are quiet.
So you're suggesting that the therapy here, his gratitude, was you helped him get in touch with some of his competencies.
Yes.
And that's therapeutic.
That's absolutely so.
Okay.
Absolutely so.
All right.
Dance movement therapy is defined, I'll use some jargon, as the psychotherapeutic use of movement to integrate the body, mind, and spirit. So as a movement therapist, our job, or my job, is to help a person be expressive about their feelings, which can include problems, loss, changes in their life, transitions that they've had to cope with, especially the older person who, by the time I may be working with them, has had to move out of their home, who maybe doesn't even have their own private room now in a nursing home facility. Their sense of privacy is now reduced to sharing a room with someone else. Their sense of loss because they're not able to walk, eat, feed, dress themselves, go to the bathroom themselves. Loss of a spouse, loss of a family visiting because the family can no longer tolerate seeing that parent or aunt or uncle in that decompensated state. So along with the dance, which is often a misleading term, the process is to help that person be expressive with their feelings and find a way of sharing their pain as well as their joy. So there's affirmation of what they're able to do, but also validation for what they are experiencing now. And remember, many of the older people I work with do not necessarily have the words to be expressive, or when the words come out, they're not clear. So I am constantly paying attention to what is nonverbal and verbal. And I think the ultimate goal is, in most therapy that I understand, is to find a way of healing what they can heal and accept changes, whatever those changes are. And it may be to accept things that can no longer change, but to be present with where they are. And if they're depressed, find someone who's able to hear them and accept them for where they are, and maybe go through that depression with them until they're at a point where they can say, you know, I liked being in this group. And I have had clients who start off grouchy, who by the end of the session say thank you. In different
But you must
ways.
have clients too that at the end of a session, not the process, but at the end of a session, feel clumsy, feel that they've been exposed, or they're more vulnerable because they've been asked to do things that draw on, that direct attention to their disability.
No, that's not how dance movement therapy works. We're working on what they're able to do. Unlike a physical therapist or an occupational therapist, I am not manipulating their bodies. I am not out there looking at function. I'm looking at their ability to move in whatever rhythm or style they are able to do. And if it means that they're sitting there with their toe tapping, that's okay. That's okay. So I'm, to use another term, a Gestalt-trained behavioral movement therapist who understands a lot about the psychotherapeutic process. Movement therapists are particularly aware of transference and countertransference. What am I experiencing from that client, and what that client is saying to me nonverbally, and what am I therefore saying to them, because the relationship is essential to how I'm moving. Unlike maybe someone in your field, a traditional psychiatrist or psychologist, where they're sitting and listening, I'm using my body to engage. So I have to be very well aware of the nonverbal messages I am giving out, as well as the nonverbal messages that the client or the group is sharing. But it really begins with acceptance. I accept you for where you are, and you have a choice in how you're going to engage and participate. And that's very hard, because often the older person cannot accept themselves because they don't like what they have become.
So, for you, Naida, what do you think works? I mean, and why does it work?
Well, I subscribe to everything that Lori and Marcia said. Everything. I don't deny anything they said. I was going to offer this. If people say in a nursing home, not in a senior center, are feeling incarcerated, and many of them are feeling incarcerated, and many of them say, I want out of here, I'd like to go home. They don't experience they don't experience surprise, they don't experience any kind of sense of mystery, they don't experience adventure generally. And so this is kind of a wonderful, if you just take one end of that, if you give one end to a resident and one end to another, even if they're in wheelchairs, and you say, okay, just play with this. And they begin, and maybe one hand is like this, and another one is like that, and you put it in the hand, and just play with it, and they begin to do this. And where they would have very little affect before, they begin to pull, and they just pull, and pretty soon, pull now, Mr. S. pull hard, pull. And the smile on Mr. S's face is so broad. It's absolutely wonderful, and you'll do that with people all over the room.
So you get me to smile.
So get you to smile.
What's that
and
word?
And you say, okay, this tug of war? Well, for a moment or a few moments, because we won't just stop at that, we might do it again, and you might do it with somebody else. He has been taken back perhaps a few years, where he entered into some kind of competition, where he played, where he got satisfaction out of playing. It's a game. He also felt He also felt a difference in his hands, in his arms. The person who can't use, isn't using arm, is actually able to pull. It's just an example of the kind of thing that can happen with people. It doesn't take very much, and makes them feel good. And they look around, and they all have participated in something that was quick, that was fun, and it was a surprise. They're surprised. There's very little surprise in a nursing home because everything is so structured. They know just when they're going to eat. They know what they're going to eat. They know when somebody's coming in to do something in their room. They know when the bingo is. They know when the television program is going on. They know. It's just a small example of the kind of thing.
It's a wonderful example because basically, again, it seems to be consistent with the theme that I think you all develop, and that's that the therapy is really helping people get reconnected with their past, their strengths, their competencies. I mean, and perhaps all three in some kind of package.
Connecting is the word. At one time, Rosalind Wilder and I wanted to have as the title of that book, instead of Creative Arts with Older Adults, Making Connections, because that's what it's all about. People have to make connections, I think, all the time, all throughout their lives. Otherwise, you get isolation.
So we're all dealing with people who have disconnected. In the last couple of minutes, maybe each of you could take 30 seconds and perhaps summarize what you think to be sort of optimally useful in helping people reconnect. We start with you.
Because I scratched.
Because you scratched.
I think that art therapy is a way of helping people non-verbally express their feelings, increase their level of self-esteem through doing something productive, increasing their cognitive and physical functioning, because what we do too is help them adapt to the materials and adapt whatever the activity might be so that they can experience success.
Marcha?
In dance movement therapy, the goal is to allow, give permission to, and foster, encourage expression of feelings, promotion of thought, what is cognitive, and one other element which we haven't really talked about directly is spirit, that force or motivation that allows us to live and exist even when odds seem so overwhelming.
Naida, we'll give you the last word, 30 seconds worth.
Again, it's all very similar. Drama therapy encompasses all of the above plus music. We use music too. And it's to alleviate symptoms that are indicative of sickness and of depression, and to enhance wellness. That's what it's all about.
Well, and I think medical model or not, I think that is what we're all about. So really, on behalf of the Alliance for the Mentally Ill and Mind Over Matter, I want to thank you all for making the long journey from Rhode Island here. Very much appreciate you being here, and I found this a very helpful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Now we keep talking.
That's great.
And now we keep talking about the lights and the heat.
Oh my God.